Right now, someone is sitting in a gray office room in Preston. They are carefully gluing raw sticks of spaghetti to soft marshmallows. An evaluator with a notepad watches every single movement from across the carpet. This is not an elite astronaut test or a corporate retreat game. This applicant is trying to get a basic job cooking fried chicken. The pay for this role is barely £10 an hour. Welcome to the modern labor market, where getting a basic job feels like survival. Across the ocean, a 19-year-old named Eve applied to work at a clothing store. She did not expect a simple shop job to require a public speaking performance. The recruiters put her in a room with 20 other nervous job applicants. They handed her a tablet and told her to design an outfit for Lady Gaga. Then she had to pitch that fictional outfit to the entire crowd of strangers. She was competing for an entry-level job folding shirts on a retail floor. She called the entire ordeal a brutal competition, just to get minimum wage. If you ask corporate executives about work today, they will say jobs are everywhere. But when you look closely at the math, the system looks entirely broken. Companies are forcing workers to jump through ridiculous hoops for jobs that pay nothing. The simple truth is that most jobs powering our economy do not pay enough. We live in an era where hard work no longer guarantees a basic living. Federal numbers from the Bureau of Labor Statistics show a truly shocking economic reality. 8 out of the 10 most common jobs in America pay below average. The national average wage across all recorded occupations is nearly $70,000 yearly, yet the largest job sectors in the country fall far below that line. Fast food workers earn an average of just $32,000 every year. Cashiers bring home roughly $33,000 after working full-time all year. Collectively, these 10 largest occupations employ over 30 million hardworking American citizens. That means tens of millions of people spend their lives doing essential daily tasks. They restock store shelves, handle customer complaints, and clean public facilities every day. Yet their paychecks leave them struggling to afford rent and standard groceries. Only general managers and registered nurses in that group earn above the national average. Meanwhile, the highest-paying jobs, like specialized surgeons, employ only a few thousand people nationwide. To understand how deep this problem goes, look at our growing home care industry. Home health aides make up the single largest job category in the country. More than 4.3 million workers provide daily care for elderly citizens. They assist vulnerable people with bathing, eating, dressing, and taking vital daily medication. It is physically exhausting work that requires tremendous emotional strength and endless human patience. Yet the typical home care aide earns roughly $16.80 an hour. That comes out to an annual salary of around $35,000. For a family of 4, the federal poverty line sits around $32,000. These care workers protect our parents, yet they struggle to feed their own children. A licensed nurse named Alyssa shared her daily reality on social media recently. She explained that during a 12-hour shift, she gets 25 minutes per patient. She fears losing her professional license because long-term care facilities are so understaffed. As our national population grows older, demand for these care jobs is exploding rapidly. Over 20% of Americans will be senior citizens within the next decade. Yet low pay and brutal conditions drive annual worker turnover close to 100%. Instead of raising wages to attract staff, companies squeeze their remaining workers harder. Government cuts to healthcare funding threaten to lower worker pay even more soon. We are building an economy that relies on care work while starving the caregivers. You might think that getting a college degree protects you from low earnings, but the underpaid workforce extends far beyond fast food counters and healthcare facilities. A quick look at professional experiences reveals a massive gap in common expectations. Zookeepers must hold a 4-year college degree to handle and feed exotic animals. Yet many city zoos pay these trained workers barely above minimum wage rates. They work outdoors in terrible weather because they love helping animals survive. The medical field has similar hidden traps for people seeking noble healthcare careers. Emergency medical technicians save lives daily while making just $14 an hour. Many EMTs report working 20 extra hours of overtime weekly just to pay rent. Without working endless extra hours, they cannot afford basic housing and healthy food. Preschool teachers with bachelor degrees face the exact same harsh economic reality daily. They educate young children in expensive private facilities while earning peanuts for compensation. Even prestigious corporate environments use tricky tactics to keep employee salaries down. A recent lawsuit against Amazon exposed how large companies handle technical job roles. Former female employees accused Amazon of misclassifying their work to pay them less money. One principal product manager noticed male peers earned far more for identical work. When she asked management, they claimed her role was classified as non-technical. Yet when male coworkers went on leave, she handled all their technical duties. Another technical writer at Amazon discovered major pay gaps early in her career. Despite having years of experience, her pay stayed near the bottom band. Male colleagues performing the exact same duties received significantly higher base salary packages. The lawsuit claims corporate job codes are used to underpay experienced female staff. Even at multi-billion-dollar tech giants, hard work does not mean fair pay. A comprehensive survey by YouGov asked Americans to rank 30 common jobs today. The results show a clear pattern of how our society values different careers. Jobs with the most positive social impact are seen as the most underpaid. Farmers, teachers, factory workers, and nurses score highest on positive societal contribution. Yet respondents widely agree that these exact workers receive painfully inadequate annual compensation. On the flip side, jobs seen as overpaid rank lowest on positive impact. Politicians, corporate executives, and professional athletes topped the overpaid list by huge margins. The public views corporate executives as highly happy and excessively paid individuals, yet their work is viewed as having very little positive impact on everyday society. Meanwhile, essential workers who keep society running are trapped with low paychecks. If being underpaid was not enough, workers face an even more sinister problem. Millions of employees have their earned wages stolen directly by their own bosses. Wage theft happens when employers illegally withhold money that workers rightfully earned. It takes many forms, including unpaid overtime, stolen tips, and mandatory unpaid work. The most common form occurs when bosses pay less than the legal minimum. A landmark report by the Economic Policy Institute revealed the massive scale of wage theft. In the 10 largest states alone, 2.4 million workers suffer minimum wage violations. Unscrupulous employers pay these vulnerable workers rates below the binding state minimum wage. The total stolen wages in just those 10 states exceed $8 billion annually. Nationwide, minimum wage violations steal over $15 billion from working families each year. The average victim of minimum wage theft loses $64 every single week. That represents nearly 1/4 of their total weekly paycheck taken away illegally. For a full-time worker, that equals over $3,000 stolen every year. They receive only $10,500 in annual pay instead of $13,000. That stolen income is often the difference between buying groceries or going hungry. Wage theft forces low-income families to rely heavily on public assistance programs nationwide. Over 21% of wage theft victims live below the federal poverty line. If these workers were simply paid their legal wages, that poverty rate would drop. Taxpayers end up subsidizing greedy businesses that refuse to pay their staff legally. Yet federal enforcement agencies have fewer investigators today than they had back in 1948. One single federal investigator is now responsible for over 130,000 workers. Employers know the chances of getting caught by labor inspectors are tiny today. Even when caught, companies usually just pay back a portion of stolen money. They rarely face harsh criminal penalties or severe fines for breaking labor laws. This creates a dark incentive for bad bosses to cheat their staff continuously. Squeezing frontline employees has become a standard business strategy for boosting short-term profits. During the pandemic, millions of frustrated workers decided they had finally had enough. The country experienced a historic labor movement known as the Great Resignation. The national quit rate reached its highest point in over 20 years. Pew Research surveyed thousands of workers to discover why so many people quit. The top reasons were low pay, lack of advancement, and feeling disrespected at work. Over 60% of workers who quit cited terrible pay as their main reason. A matching 63% said they had zero opportunities to advance their careers. 57% stated that feeling disrespected by management forced them to leave. Lack of childcare and rigid work schedules also drove millions to walk away. Workers were tired of giving their lives to companies that treated them like machine parts. Interestingly, most people who quit their jobs found better situations elsewhere soon after. Over half of job switchers reported earning higher pay at their new companies. They also enjoyed better work-life balance and more flexible daily schedules overall. Moving to a new employer proved to be the only way to get a raise. Staying loyal to a single company often resulted in stagnant pay and disrespect. Younger workers were the most likely group to voluntarily leave bad jobs behind. 37% of young adults under 30 quit a job during that period. Lower-income workers also quit at much higher rates than wealthy corporate professionals. They realized that working a demeaning job for tiny pay was not worth it. If a job cannot cover basic survival, staying makes no financial sense. Yet, despite workers demanding better treatment, the modern hiring process has gotten worse. Job seekers today face endless online forms, personality quizzes, and unpaid trial shifts. A neuroscientist named Maya applied for a basic part-time job while hunting work. A company invited her for an in-person interview for a marketing assistant position. She paid £30 out of her own pocket for train tickets to London. When she arrived, the manager took her on a door-to-door sales trip. She was forced to walk around city streets for 4 unpaid hours. She watched the manager try to convince passers-by to sign up for charities. Afterwards, she had to pay her own subway fare home without receiving pay. The advertised marketing job was just a commission-only sales gig, paying below minimum wage. Another job candidate named Zara applied for a position at TK Maxx store. She completed an online personality test and went to the store for assessment. Staff members instructed her to go onto the retail floor and organize merchandise. She spent an hour unpaid arranging clothing displays for the store's benefit. After doing free labor for the business, the store completely ghosted her application. These stories show a clear shift in power between employers and desperate workers. With high youth unemployment and limited job openings, companies hold all the cards. They use grueling interview processes to screen out candidates and extract free work. Applicants spend days doing free assignments just to be rejected by automated emails. The hiring process has turned into an abusive filter before employment even starts. Once you survive that brutal, unpaid interview process, you might think you are finally safe. You might assume that landing a respected career means achieving instant financial security, but the epidemic of underpaid labor does not stop at the retail cash register. It infects some of the most glamorous and highly educated professions in our entire society. A massive online discussion recently asked people to name jobs that pay shockingly low salaries. Hundreds of working professionals shared the dark financial realities hiding behind their impressive job titles. Their stories completely destroy the myth that a prestigious title equals a comfortable living wage. Take a look at the people working in highly competitive, passion-driven careers today. Zookeepers and museum professionals spend years earning expensive bachelor and master degrees. They enter these fields hoping to educate the public and protect endangered animal species. Yet many earn significantly less than a starting public school teacher in their state. They take home wages that barely cover minimum wage after taxes and student loans. Employers know these are considered absolute dream jobs by thousands of passionate, highly educated people. They weaponize that passion to justify paying salaries that cannot cover basic apartment rent. The aviation industry uses this exact same psychological trick on its frontline airline workers. People assume flight attendants are well compensated because commercial air travel is incredibly expensive. The job still carries a vintage reputation of global glamour and jet-setting luxury. In reality, the modern airline industry has turned the profession into a race to the bottom. Flight attendants are notoriously underpaid, often only earning money when the airplane doors physically close. They sit through hours of unpaid boarding delays and angry passenger disputes completely off the clock. You might think that putting on a tailored suit and entering corporate consulting fixes this. But the white-collar world is hiding its own massive epidemic of overworked corporate professionals. Entry-level management consultants at major firms often earn around $70,000 a year. That sounds like a decent starting salary until you calculate their actual working hours. Many report working from 7 in the morning until 11 at night every single day. When you divide that salary by 70 or 80 hours a week, it is grim. They are essentially making minimum wage while wearing expensive suits and making corporate PowerPoint decks. Architects face a similarly brutal reality during the first decade of their professional careers. Becoming a licensed architect requires a 5-year degree, heavy exams, and 3 years of experience. Yet before getting licensed, these highly trained designers often start around $45,000. They work in some of the most expensive cities in the world, designing luxury buildings. Yet they cannot afford to buy even a tiny apartment in the cities they build. Income mobility is painfully slow, leaving brilliant designers stuck at the bottom of the pay scale. This creates a massive societal problem that internet communities are now calling misemployment. People are technically employed, but they are trapped in jobs they absolutely despise daily. They are doing work that crushes their soul simply to avoid starving in the street. Online forums are flooded with workers who feel completely trapped in this modern economic machine. They point out that relentless corporate layoff waves keep creating a pool of desperate people. If you refuse to grind yourself into dust, companies just fire you immediately. They replace you with someone even more desperate in a relentless race to the bottom. Many workers note that all motivation to actually build a meaningful life has vanished completely. The corporate reward for working hard is usually just more work for the exact same pay. One online commenter perfectly described this as a desperation-driven race to the bottom. You are either not making enough money, working too many hours, or hating your daily tasks. Sometimes you are incredibly unlucky and get hit by all 3 of those curses simultaneously. The system demands total loyalty but offers absolutely zero loyalty or stability in return. To make matters worse, Modern companies have engineered clever legal tricks to avoid paying people. One major tactic is called workplace fissuring, where companies contract out their internal jobs. Instead of hiring a janitor or a delivery driver directly, a massive corporation uses a subcontractor. This creates a complex maze that protects the wealthy parent company from any legal liability. If the subcontractor steals wages or denies overtime, the big corporation simply claims total ignorance. It is a deliberate legal shield designed to squeeze frontline labor costs as low as possible. Another massive loophole is intentionally misclassifying standard employees as independent contractors. Studies show up to 20% of employers illegally misclassify their workers today. By calling an employee a contractor, the business completely dodges minimum wage and overtime laws. They do not have to pay health benefits, payroll taxes, or standard unemployment insurance. The worker gets stuck with all the tax burdens and none of the basic legal protections. It is literal wage theft disguised as entrepreneurial freedom and flexible gig work. So why should you care if someone else is underpaid and overworked today? Because this epidemic is quietly destroying the foundation of our entire consumer economy. When tens of millions of workers cannot afford anything beyond rent and basic groceries, spending stops. They stop buying houses, they stop going to restaurants, and they stop taking family vacations. Local businesses shut down because their potential customers have zero disposable income left to spend. You cannot run a healthy consumer economy when the consumers are completely broke and exhausted. This wage crisis is also causing a massive shift in human demographics and family planning. Young adults are looking at their tiny bank accounts and their grueling weekly work schedules. They are correctly deciding that bringing children into this unstable financial environment is completely impossible. Childcare costs are astronomical, and employers offer zero flexibility for parents struggling to balance life. We are witnessing a historic birth rate collapse driven directly by corporate greed and low pay. When a society makes starting a basic family a luxury item, that society has fundamentally failed. If you bring this up to business leaders, they will immediately complain about a skills shortage. They claim they simply cannot find good workers to fill their open job positions. But the truth is, there is no real shortage of skilled workers in the country. There is only a massive shortage of companies willing to pay fair market wages. If a business cannot afford to pay its workers enough to survive, it has failed. It is not a successful business. It is a failing experiment subsidized by worker poverty. The entire system feels like a rigged game because it was designed to be one. Underemployment and stagnant wages are not accidental bugs in the modern economic software. They are intended features designed to keep labor costs low and corporate stock prices high. Desperate workers who are constantly terrified of missing rent do not demand better working conditions. They put their heads down, skip their lunch breaks, and work unpaid overtime quietly. The people at the top know exactly what they are doing to the working class. But understanding how this financial machine operates is the first step to surviving it. You have to realize that your worth as a human is not defined by your paycheck. The fact that your job overworks you does not mean you are building a noble career. It just means a massive corporation has found an efficient way to exploit your time. You might assume that escaping traditional corporate jobs solves this entire problem. Many people believe creative careers offer total financial freedom and massive wealth. But the entertainment industry is hiding its own massive epidemic of poverty. Look at the people directing the movies and television shows you watch. A working movie director might earn $300,000 per film. That sounds like a massive payday for a creative professional at first. But they typically only get to make one movie every 3 years. That drops their actual average income to $100,000 a year. Then you must subtract massive taxes, union dues, and expensive agent percentages. They often net very little while living in incredibly expensive major cities. The digital economy offers an even more deceptive illusion of financial freedom. Millions of young people now view content creation as their dream job. They watch wildly successful streamers and assume that hard work guarantees wealth. But one online creator correctly described the internet algorithm as a total lottery. Success on digital platforms requires an extreme amount of pure, unpredictable luck. Unless the algorithm randomly favors you, you will not make any money. It has absolutely nothing to do with how hard you actually work. You are essentially playing a digital scratch ticket while working for free. This systemic underpayment infects skilled manual labor just as deeply as creative fields. Consider the automotive technicians who repair our modern, highly complex digital vehicles. Customers routinely pay auto shops $180 per hour. You might think the highly trained mechanic takes home a huge cut, but starting technicians usually see only 15% of that hourly rate. The shop keeps the rest of the cash as pure operational profit. Meanwhile, the mechanic must personally spend thousands buying their own specialized tools. Some senior master technicians spend over $50,000 on their equipment. They take on massive personal debt just to perform their daily jobs. The medical field demands even more sacrifice for shockingly low financial returns. We previously discussed the brutal reality facing underpaid emergency medical technicians today. But even highly specialized hospital roles suffer from this exact same wage suppression. A cardiothoracic intensive care unit nurse handles some of the most critical patients. Their daily job is to literally keep human beings alive after surgery. There is absolutely zero room for error or fatigue in this role. Yet many of these specialized nurses earn roughly $40 an hour. That pay rate completely fails to match the immense stress and responsibility. This brings us back to a massive demographic crisis approaching our economy. We are fundamentally failing the people who care for our aging population. As baby boomers age, demand for basic home care is skyrocketing incredibly. But the supply of workers willing to do this job is shrinking. Immigration restrictions have severely narrowed the pipeline of available international care workers. More than a quarter of the direct care workforce consists of immigrants. Roughly 1 in 3 home health workers in America are foreign-born individuals. When federal policies restrict legal immigration pathways, this specific workforce collapses instantly. Ending temporary protected status for certain countries removes vital workers from facilities. This puts unimaginable pressure on the exhausted healthcare staff who are left. At the same time, sweeping Medicaid funding cuts threaten their modest paychecks. Slashing $1 trillion in government funding ripples directly down to workers. The inevitable result is that these essential direct care workers get paid less. Policy researchers warn that this crisis will devastate us for 30 years. We have a massive, growing demand colliding with a rapidly shrinking workforce. Our economy relies entirely on an invisible army of underpaid, exhausted caregivers. If that army finally collapses from financial stress, the whole system breaks. We are treating essential medical infrastructure like a disposable fast food business model. You simply cannot run a functioning society while starving your most essential workers. The most insidious part of this epidemic is how perfectly legal it is. But millions of workers also face outright illegal theft every single day. Wage theft goes far beyond a boss just paying below minimum wage. It includes forcing employees to work off the clock before their shifts. It includes managers illegally denying workers their legally mandated daily meal breaks. It includes companies taking illegal deductions directly out of an employee paycheck. Small amounts of stolen time eventually add up to billions of dollars. Tipped workers face the highest risk of having their wages stolen directly. Federal law allows restaurants to pay servers just over $2 hourly. The employer claims the worker will make up the difference through tips. If tips fall short, the boss is legally required to pay more. But policing this confusing math is left entirely to the exhausted worker. They must track every single hour and every single tip constantly. Most tipped workers have very little knowledge of their actual legal rights. This leaves them incredibly vulnerable to abuse by greedy restaurant managers everywhere. Studies show restaurant servers experience poverty at double the rate of others. States with the lowest tipped minimum wages see the highest server poverty. We have normalized a system where customers pay the workers directly. The employer completely avoids their basic responsibility to pay a living wage. So how do Americans actually feel about this massive economic pressure cooker? The recent YouGov poll asked workers to rate their own daily jobs. The results paint a very clear picture of a deeply divided society. Over half of all Americans firmly believe they are currently underpaid. Only a tiny 7% think they make more than they deserve. But when you break the numbers down by income, the truth emerges. Workers making over $100,000 generally feel adequately paid today. But those earning under $50,000 live in a different reality. Only 20% of lower-income workers feel their pay is actually fair. This massive wage divide directly impacts how happy people feel at work. Low-income workers report being significantly more miserable during their daily job shifts. They also struggle to see any value in the work they do. Lower-income workers are far less likely to feel they make a positive impact. When you pay someone a poverty wage, you destroy their professional dignity. You send a clear message that their time and effort mean nothing. This is exactly why the Great Resignation caused such massive economic panic. Workers finally realized the corporate loyalty game was a total financial scam. During that historic labor shift, over half of quitters did something drastic. 53% of them entirely changed their field of work or occupation. They did not just leave a bad boss, they abandoned their industries. People without postgraduate degrees were especially likely to make this huge leap. They realized their chosen career paths would never pay a living wage. So they completely reinvented themselves just to survive the rising inflation costs. This mass exodus leaves massive holes in our most critical social industries. When preschool teachers realize they make less than fast food managers, they leave. When emergency medical technicians cannot pay rent, they quit saving lives daily. When public researchers cannot find science funding, they abandon vital laboratory work. We are bleeding incredible talent simply because we refuse to pay people. The efficient free market is actively destroying the jobs that hold society together. If a business model relies on paying poverty wages, it is completely broken. If a company requires workers to use food stamps, it is failing. The government is essentially subsidizing corporate profits through massive public welfare programs. Taxpayers foot the bill so massive retail chains can report record earnings. This is not a functioning capitalist economy driven by innovation and hard work. It is a massive wealth extraction machine disguised as a free labor market. To truly understand how money works, you must look past the job titles. You must ignore the corporate mission statements and the fake wellness programs. Look directly at the basic math of wages versus the cost of living. The math proves that hard work is no longer rewarded with financial security. The system only rewards capital ownership, leverage, and aggressive legal tax avoidance. The overworked and underpaid epidemic is the predictable result of this modern design. If you find yourself trapped in one of these brutal underpaid roles, remember something. Your inability to afford a house is not a personal moral failure. You are playing a financial game where the rules were changed secretly. But understanding the board is the very first step to winning the game. You must aggressively protect your time, demand fair pay, and build real leverage.